Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. And thank you, Richard, for the words and warming up. And let me tell you something, because some of the speakers, they were worrying and concerned that so less people are here. And it sounded a little bit, for my ears, a little bit frustrated. But I want to tell you, there is no need and no reason to be frustrated, because you are on the right track. You are trying to collect all the peace-loving forces in the Netherlands. And this is the challenge we have to face at the moment. And it's very difficult, I know this, because all over the places in the European Union member state, it is very difficult, because the peace movement and the so-called left is so much separated, fragmented and divided. Since 2014 we have this discussions going on in Germany, and at latest since 2022 there is a discussion: is it okay for a left party or a left-wing force to be in favor of weapon deliveries, for example, to Ukraine, to fight against Russia? And since everything is upside down regarding the terms of left or right, I always say, who is in favor of peace? Who is in favor of being against a NATO military pact, military interventions, against drone wars, against weapon deliveries, for a genocide, for example, for Israel in the Gaza Strip? He is on the right track. But whoever calls himself leftist but is in favor of weapon deliveries, this is nothing. Has nothing to do with left politics. Left politics was always against militarization, against armament and interventions. And if people from a so-called conservative organizations and parties are joining us for peace against interventions, they are more than welcome, and that's why we shouldn't be frustrated and feel powerless or even hopeless. We have hope, and there is always a reason to be hopeful. And since Richard was mentioned in the introduction with Julian Assange, I just want to give you one example why there is always hope and never a reason to feel hopeless or powerless. I was elected to the German parliament since 2005, and I was the first member of parliament ever who has visited Julian Assange 2012 in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, when he was seeking asylum, when he was an asylum seeker in the embassy. And then I started 12 years then, my work, my solidarity work with Julian Assange for his release and for his freedom. And when I was 12 in London, I was attacked by the German media. I was attacked by other German parliamentarians. And I was even attacked within the left party, in my own party and my own parliamentary group. How can you dare to be in solidarity with a rapist or an anti-Semite and whatever? I was alone. And I was totally alone 2019. Quite before he was then catched by the British police, I was visiting him again in the Ecuadorian embassy. And I was also, again, totally alone. Not a single member of parliament was in favor or was in solidarity with Julian. But I never gave up, because one thing I have learned from Julian was also always keep fighting. And we fought. We have been fighting for his release. We all together, and we made it. We made it all together. So don't feel powerless. Don't feel hopeless. Don't be frustrated. We are on the right track. And I congratulate the people organizing this event yesterday and today, because I think it is right in facing all these madness in our governments, the madness of NATO policy, that we have to collect and to bring all the forces freedom and peace-loving forces together. And why it is so important to not permit any division within the peace-loving people. At this historic NATO summit, dear friends, this historical NATO summit, the heads of governments, the heads of states, they decided on the largest attack on the welfare state in Europe since World War II. The largest attack on social welfare state. Donald Trump, as the US president, gives the orders, and the Europeans follow like lemmings. 5% of GDP. 5% of GDP is to be spent on military and armament in the future. And this would mean almost doubling the alliance's current military spending to $3 trillion, even though NATO already spends more than all other countries in the world combined. Anyone who truly cares about the well-being of people in Europe must now organize the resistance against this anti-social attack by the NATO. And that's why we want welfare state instead of NATO and the war alliance called NATO. And let's be clear, friends. Anyone who claims this massive militarization has nothing to do with defense is lying. They are lying. And anyone who claims this rearmament is incompatible with maintaining the welfare state is lying. And anyone who claims NATO is a community of values like human rights, while simultaneously supports Israel in genocide and aggressive war, is also lying. And this decision by NATO leaders is a declaration of a social war against their own populations. And it is a rejection of the sovereignty of the European member states. Fiscal policy, economic policy, social policy will now be dictated by the NATO military pact. And it is a desperable attempt to preserve the crumbling global hegemony of the United States at the expense of the people in the European vassal states. And this is why we say in Germany, the peace movement, and you here in Netherlands, we will not be drawn into the wars and proxy wars of the United States. That's why we say peace instead of NATO. And let me give you another argument. NATO doesn't seem to know it, but it is now also a nostalgic, very romanticized alliance because it dwells in memories of former greatness. Take the current rearmament debate, for example. People refer to the 1960s when similar shares of the GDP were spent on defense. But that is a gross deception. Let's take my motherland, Germany, as an example. Between 1950 and 1970, German GDP grew by an average of 6.4% per year. GDP grew 6.4%. But today in Germany, we have a recession, the second or third recession since 2022. That means today's massive rearmament will not be financed by economic growth, but it will be financed by pension cuts, by infrastructure cutbacks, and by massive debt for future generations. And if we don't want to become victims of these dangerous NATO decisions and romantics, there is only one solution: we have to leave NATO. We have to be in favor of neutrality rather than a part of a NATO military pact. And the other thing is what we have to also recognize now is that another reason why we have to have an alternative to NATO is also that your former Prime Minister Netherlands, Mark Rutte, for example, Mark Rutte, for example, has sent a message to the US President Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was so honest and published it in Truth Social, his message. And I want to share the message of Mark Rutte with you guys now. Just a second. He said, let me quote from his message. Dear President, Mr. President, dear Donald. Congratulations and thank you for your decisive action in Iran. That was truly extraordinary and something no one alive dared to do. It makes us safer. You are flying into another big success in The Hague this evening. It was not easy, but I've got them all signed onto 5%. And I just want to tell you, because there is some debates about Spain is not following and joining or whatever, this is just propaganda. They all will follow the 5%, like it was in the past. So he says, we have got them all signed onto 5%. Donald, you have driven us to a really, really important movement for America and Europe and the world. You will achieve something no American president in decades could get done. Europe, and this is saying Rutte, the former Prime Minister of Netherlands and the Secretary General of the NATO, is saying Europe is going to pay in a big way, as they should, and it will be your win, quote, end. Europe pays and you win. And sadly, Rutte is right. Even the Roman Empire vassal prince probably had more backbone than a NATO Secretary General who is proud of making Europe bleed for US hegemony. This is disgraceful servility from Mark Rutte, and this servility, this submission of Rutte, he represents all the entire European NATO memberships. And that's why, dear friends, we have to be stronger, be more, but we have to keep fighting against this war and aggressional pact, the NATO, because we say peace instead of NATO, freedom instead of submission. Thank you very much.